You wanted music? We got music, David. And it's loud and it's Monday. Time to wake up. It's noon. You wish it was Friday. It's okay. We feel your pain. You got stranded birds all over Canada. The loonies are going quackers. And here we are, Monday, August the 18th, 2025. And just to say, there's a striking airline in Canada, and some people are stranded. And unfortunately, they don't have a government that seems to be able to negotiate their way into this or into that. Welcome, everybody, to the Rant Network. That was a plug against a good friend of mine. It's your go-to podcast for unapologetic discussions hosted by myself with David Solomon, right to my left today. We're tackling a diverse range of topics, candid conversations, bold opinions, whether we're breaking down the latest headlines like Air Canada's on strike, or delving into the latest pop culture, politics, and complexities of modern life. So grab a seat, settle in, because David is sitting at his desk. Anyways, guys, let's understand media, let's understand optics, and let's try and put things in perspective. If you have not been under a rock or in North Korea, where the media has been blacked out, you would know that Donald Trump flew all the way over to, it's called Elmdorf-Richardson, which is a joint Air Force base up in Alaska. Now, you may not know Alaska was purchased for 100 years for, I think it's 20 cents an acre from the Russian czars. Here we are in 2025. And there's a war going on in the Ukraine where Russia invaded and attacked a sovereign nation that it doesn't believe is sovereign. It believes it's part of its efforts. But here we are, 2025, and what we're talking about today is how an utter disaster, diplomatic failure, that Donald Trump didn't reach a ceasefire in how many year old war that started with who was president of the United States? This is just flipping bananas, David. It doesn't matter where you were watching, but if you didn't watch the right network, you didn't get the right view. David, what say you?
Well, Stuart, thank you so much for going off track, as you are so good to do. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm stuck here in Montreal thanks to Air Canada and its bloody incompetence. I should have been with Stuart actually doing this live in Florida. And instead, I'm here in Montreal. But if you listen to how the media has positioned it, the Liberal government of Canada has nothing to do with it. They did nothing wrong, even though there was legislation put out Saturday to send everybody back to the work. And the flight attendant says no, and Air Canada says yes, we're going. And again, if you listen to the media narrative of all this, the Liberal government did what they could. Again, who are they in favor of? Now, this is a minor story in the grand scheme of things. It's only 130,000 odd Canadians a day impacted about this. But think of the millions of lives in Ukraine that were impacted by this war, the displacements, the resettlement for so many Ukrainians on a global scale, right? Which I'll get to in just a second, again, Stuart. But here's the thing. You were right. If you are sitting watching TV, CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC especially, this was a disaster meeting. Putin schooled Trump. Putin screwed Trump. Trump's an idiot. Carolyn Levitt, you could tell how angry she is and how disappointed they are by this meeting. And on and on and on. Now, the reason I get to see some of this stuff is I've got this curated app of Apple News on my phone and my iPad, and I get all these liberal dumped media, which I will not name because they shouldn't even be alive with the way they portray things. They are absolute scandalous lies portrayed as news. If you remember the media backstory a few months ago when they wanted to bring podcasters into the White House, and they were said those aren't media because they were favoring Trump, or they actually showed you the other side. Now you go into Apple News and you have these so-called media houses that are just out to slam Trump and the Republicans. Mm-hmm. Every time they open their eyes, the world is a disaster. Now, I'm not making this up, folks. But let's take a conventional group called CBS.
Ooh.
paramount. The people who've been in the spotlight because Trump is controlling them over this negotiation, over a lawsuit, over a merger, over all these kinds of things. And once again, Marco Rubio goes on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, who clearly has a hate on the Republicans. Her and CBS have decided that if you remember the debates, and if you remember every time Marco was on, and by the way, I've seen quite a few of his interviews. First of all, Martha Brennan just likes to talk over people like other journalists do, and she needs to get her narrative in for her audience. What does she say? That Trump is going to bully Zelensky into a deal. Because if you remember the meeting in the White House months ago, how he bullied him and J.D. Vance bullied, it's all they talk about. A narrative that doesn't exist. They are not getting off their Trump derangement syndrome. They're not getting off of this hate on Donald Trump. And Marco Rubio literally called them out and said, it's stop pushing a stupid media narrative. Marco Rubio is one of the clearest head Secretary of State we've seen in a long time. And I got to tell you, this guy stands up there and speaks very, very clearly. And he's right to the point. And he's called out the media when they're wrong. And yet, CBS to CNN to MSNBC are going to have pushed with their idiot talking heads how Trump ruined the meeting with Putin. Putin is going to school. Putin is going to force this. La, 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 la. And if you go even further, you see Europeans are going to, they have to support Zelensky because Trump's going to screw them. It's fascinating how you could twist something that isn't fact, but just enough. I don't know, Stuart. At one point, I'm wondering, we've already had a lawsuit over 60 Minutes, and we've already had a lawsuit with ABC. I would love to see the White House, I'll take a page out of your book, suing every freaking media house for distorting the truth. Could you imagine the number of lawsuits that way?
Yeah, but it's even easier. I mean, I would. You don't have to sue them for that. You just sue them for campaign fraud. Listen, and I'll tell you why it's campaign fraud. Remember, David, you and we called out the invasion in Ukraine a month before it actually happened. Let the bells ring, and I want them to ring really loud for anyone that's a critic on how I get off topic or how you and I banter about whatever irks us that day. Let's talk about ammonia nitrate. Let's talk about how the Biden government, the Democrats, oh shit, it's Obama who allowed him to go take the Donbass. So, when you talk about hypocrisy, I say you got to sue the media for campaign fraud. And you know what? I think they should all be incarcerated. I think their bank accounts should be drained. I think the federal government should teach them a lesson that they tried to teach Donald Trump. Rules for me, not for thee. This is what's been going on in the White House for way too long. When you talk about Marco Rubio, you talk about Secretary of State, you mean someone who's acting on behalf of the United States government versus their bank account? Because, let's be honest, the Clintons left the White House with $750,000. They're worth how many hundreds of millions of dollars? The Bidens win it. How many hundreds of million dollars they worth? They are using this as a launch pad. But by the way, they say Trump's making a fortune. Trump lost $7 billion since he's been president. He's gone from 3.7 to $3.0 billion while he's president. It's kind of like the inverse where we keep trying to tell everyone these guys go out there and project what they're doing. All of these media houses and networks are going after Trump. They're funded by the Rothschilds. They're funded by the Vanderbilts. They're funded by the Soroses. They're funded by communists.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Here's the problem, Stuart. The First Amendment, and I'm just reading it now. The First Amendment, they're wrapping themselves because it says the free press clause protects the right of individuals to express themselves through publication and dissemination of information, ideas, and opinions without interference, constraint, or prosecution by the government. Ergo, they could say whatever they want. The Constitution that they have ripped to shreds, that they have allowed the left to completely maul is also the same document that is supposed to protect them. And yet they can say whatever they want and say freedom of the press. That's your First Amendment. That's the problem. So they can decide that by Trump, oh, Trump is probably, he's a buffoon. I could say whatever I want, and you can't do anything.
Well, you have election-related disinformation and mischaracterizations of the opponents. You have foreign policy narratives. You have echo chamber syndrome, propaganda framing, and direct influence. The consequence of this is eroding public trust, polarization of society being fractured, threats to security. My God.
Stuart, it doesn't matter. But you see, it doesn't matter. Stuart, it doesn't matter. This is the same media that has been misrepresenting on one hand, look at the difference. All right, Russia invades Ukraine. It's front page news nonstop.
Who was president?
When did it stop? When did it change, Stuart? When did the Ukraine war no longer become front page news? When Israel was invaded by Hamas. That point, it went even further in, as the old expression goes, well into the pages of the newspaper. It was no longer headline news on the media. It was no longer that. In fact, if you look at the coverage of the Gaza war, there is more coverage of that war than every conflict on earth combined, including the Ukraine. So here you are, a media house that's sitting here has decided that this one little war versus a Russia invading a democratic country is more important. The media decided this. And the media has been portraying it like this, as Israel's bad, Hamas is good. And the same people who say, if it's Trump, if it's Biden in the office, look how he supported the Ukraine.
Well, listen. Again, their argument is it's only been a sovereign nation for like 32 years. It was established in 1991, and it declared its independence from the Soviet Union. And but the media would go out there and say the Jews invaded Palestine. This is
your media, my friend. This is
your
media.
Well, what about your media? I'm sorry. I CBC. I mean, let's not talk about CBS. Let's talk about CBC. Let's talk about CTV. Let's talk about the wonderful networks you have in Canada. At least we've got some options.
Oh, once again, how do you do this? How does your brain function? Talking about Canada. Who fucking cares about my little country? Your media.
Thank you so much. I'm not the pompous American. You're the pompous Canadian who thinks their media is a little nothing for a tiny little country. You're right.
Stuart, your media.
You're right.
Your media houses. Your number of publications is off the charts. Your media is allowed to say whatever, however, whenever. And yet the president of the United States, Carolyn, the press secretary, her name escapes me, and all these people, they spend days and days and days going from one media to the other. I think, Stuart, I got to tell you something. This is hilarious, okay? Which the media is not going to really touch on. You want to crap on Trump, right? Guess where you can go? Any liberal media. You want to know where they avoid? Where they're going to get hammered. If you look at your Democrats, and Bill Maher, by the way, talked about this last week. I thought this was brilliant. He can't get a Democrat on his show. Nope. Not a Democrat. He can't get Obama. He can't get Clinton. He's not going to get Biden. None of them want to go on his show because he actually does something that the others don't do. He's not being part of them. And
he's person not credit. He doesn't drink the Kool-Aid.
They don't drink the Kool-Aid. And your media has, oh, wait a second. We want to bring in the people who are just going to spew what we want to hear. And so if you want to talk about, did Trump screw up in Alaska? Which, I love one media house, which I'm not going to name, Stuart, because again, they don't deserve the publicity. They said, I can't believe Trump didn't walk out with a peace treaty with Putin. In what world could Trump have negotiated a peace treaty for a sovereign country that's not his?
What peace treaty did any of these Democratic presidents?
No. Again, you go down the wrong path.
It's
listen to the statement. Listen to the statement and dissect it.
Okay.
Trump didn't negotiate a peace treaty with Putin. He didn't walk out with one, as if one, Trump could talk on Zelensky's behalf.
He can't.
Two, that in one meeting you can negotiate a peace treaty. Not possible.
Nope.
Okay? You know, it's fascinating how the world has a short memory. Because the memory, let me remind everybody, could you imagine if Trump would have said, I negotiated this deal with Putin? You know what they would have said? So did Neville Chamberlain in 1938 with Hitler, when he walked around with, I have a piece of paper from Adolf Hitler. It doesn't matter what Trump would have done or didn't do. Trump's the bad guy. Trump is irrelevant. It is amazing, Stuart, how your media can't get off Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, and oh, by the way, you want to know what even the funnier thing is? Someone brought up, yeah, Trump's probably going to run for a third term. What relevance did that have to Zelensky and Ukraine? And it just amazes me how deranged they are, and there's not one you could do about it.
You know, David, the media outlets are hearing the summer sound of crickets. You know what that means, Dave? We've gone over our quarter hour.
I don't know what you're doing because there's no music, my friend. Have yourself a great day, everybody, because Stuart's equipment is broken. Stuart, just wrap it up. Forget it.
What are you talking about? There's no music?
No, sir.
Yep, I screwed something up. Welcome, everybody. Got to say goodbye. David, you know, it's been another brilliant episode. We truly appreciate you tuning in every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern, where David and I shit on somebody. Today, we don't know who we shit on, but definitely the outlets definitely didn't do well. All right, guys, take care. See you soon.